They showed up at my farm with contracts, demanding I sell my land to fix their mess. The same family who mocked me for years. That day, I finally said no. Welcome to my channel, a space where we dive into real, raw, and sometimes uncomfortable stories inspired by threads across Reddit about family, friends, and the messiness of life. Today's story follows a woman who chose love and simplicity over legacy and status, and paid the price for it. But when her family came knocking with empty hands and heavy expectations, she had to decide, would she save the very people who once mocked everything she built? Have you ever been the lesser sibling? The one they underestimated? Watch until the end to see how this character finds her voice and her power. And if you enjoy stories like these, don't forget to subscribe. It means the world to me and helps me keep bringing you new stories worth hearing.
They say every bride remembers her wedding day forever. I do, just not for the reasons I hoped. I'm Elena Rhodes, former valedictorian, scholarship kid, environmental science graduate, and apparently the family disappointment. I married a farmer. And while I knew my choice would raise a few manicured eyebrows at the Rhodes family table, I never expected the toast at my own wedding to be the thing I'd remember most. Not the vows, not the kiss, not even the dance. Just one microphone, one sister, and a perfectly timed smirk. To the happy couple, Sienna said, raising her glass to Caleb and me as if she were toasting a pair of sitcom characters instead of her own flesh and blood. May your love grow like weeds in the mud you seem to enjoy so much. The room burst into laughter. Laughter. 200 guests, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and me, standing there in my grandmother's repurposed lace gown, my boots stained with the dirt from our own land because Caleb had been out checking on the irrigation lines that very morning. He smelled like wheat and earth. I loved him more than anyone I'd ever known. And all they saw was mud. My cheeks burned. My fingers clenched the stem of my water glass. No champagne for me. I'd already had my one allowed indulgence at the bridal shower, and that was enough for a girl from the sticks, as my cousin once joked. Smile, my mother hissed through her teeth, her red lips never parting from the forced grin she was wearing for the crowd. Don't make a scene. Of course not. I had no right to make a scene. That was Sienna's job, the family's golden girl, TV host, real estate mogul, Instagram darling with a closet the size of my entire home. I swallowed my pride along with the tears threatening to crawl past my mascara. Caleb reached for my hand under the table, his thumb tracing the lines in my palm. That's how he comforts me, silently, steadily. No grand speeches, no crowd-pleasing gestures, just a quiet reminder that I'm not alone in this life I've chosen. They don't matter, he whispered into my ear. We do. And in that moment, he was right. Even with the clink of glasses and the stabs of designer-sharp mockery, we mattered. But I didn't know, couldn't have known, how much that wedding toast would set the tone for everything that came after. Not just for the tension between me and my family, but for the truth I was about to discover. A truth that would turn that mud-stained dress into a symbol of something much, much bigger. 3 years later, standing in the middle of my own greenhouse with dirt under my nails and hope in my chest, I would finally understand what that day really meant, and why Sienna's toast wasn't just a joke. It was a warning. 3 years later, I walked into the kind of house that looked like it had its own zip code. Marble foyer, floating staircase, a wine wall that probably cost more than my entire kitchen. My sister Sienna's new home was exactly what you'd expect from a woman who wore heels in airports and called her assistant babe unironically. The invitation had said family brunch, but the spread looked like it was for a magazine shoot. Avocado mousse on gold-rimmed plates, napkins folded like swans, and a live harpist playing Vivaldi in the background. I was still brushing straw out of my ponytail from that morning's harvest run. "I almost didn't recognize you," Sienna said as she air-kissed both sides of my face without making contact. "So rustic. It's cute." "It's practical," I replied, slipping off my boots at the door, even though no one else had. "You brought food?" she asked, glancing at the casserole dish in my hands like it might contain roadkill. "It's beet and barley bake from our garden." "How charming." She turned away before I could explain the recipe. Caleb was parking the truck out front. We'd driven over an hour to get here, across winding roads and subdivisions with names like Whispering Oaks and Crystal Point. He didn't say much during the drive, but I could tell his jaw was tight. Family functions made him nervous. Not because he couldn't handle himself. Caleb could negotiate with seed vendors in 4 languages, but because the judgment in Sienna's smile cut deeper than words. We hadn't been invited to the housewarming party 6 months ago, or the New Year's bash, or the Rhodes family fundraiser where Sienna gave a $10,000 donation on live TV and our parents beamed like she'd cured cancer. But for some reason, this brunch, this gathering, we were not just invited to, but expected at. And I was about to find out why. At the dining table, my mother, Vivian, offered me a strained smile and a glass of mimosa I didn't take. My father, Harlan, wore his usual politician expression, calculated warmth. Celeste, my youngest sister, sat quietly at the far end, buttering a croissant she probably didn't want. She met my eyes briefly, then looked away. "You still teaching?" Dad asked, as if he didn't know I'd left the district 2 years ago to run our farm full-time. "No," I said. "We expanded the CSA program, and I started offering sustainability workshops." He nodded, not actually hearing a word. "Well, as long as it keeps you busy." Across the table, Sienna was laughing, loudly, with Miles, her husband. His suit jacket didn't wrinkle when he sat, which told me it cost more than our used pickup. He tapped something into his phone mid-bite and didn't even glance up when he said, "So, how's life in the dirt?" I smiled, sweet as molasses. "Rewarding." "Must be," he said, sipping from a crystal glass. "Heard kale prices went up. You're basically running the next Amazon." "Don't mock them," Celeste said softly, surprising everyone. "Their produce stand did better than half the vendors at last quarter's market." Miles raised an eyebrow. "You track kale sales now?" "Better than tracking fake crypto deals," she muttered. My father cleared his throat loudly. "Let's not turn brunch into a courtroom, shall we?" That's when I knew something was off. You see, when my family starts pretending everything's fine, it's usually because something's on fire. I didn't have to wait long. Halfway through the second course, some kind of foam disguised as eggs, Sienna stood and tapped her glass. "I wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for being here. It's been a challenging few months, and we're so lucky to have family around us." Challenging? This was the woman who posted photos from Santorino with captions like #BossBabeLife. Caleb had just walked in, wiping dust from his jeans with a cloth he kept in the glove box. He stood beside me quietly as Sienna continued. "Miles and I have had to make some tough decisions lately," she said, her tone carefully casual. "Business moves, reallocating assets. It's boring stuff, really." My mother dabbed her eyes with a linen napkin. That's when the words dropped like stones. "But we may need help. Family help." Everyone turned to look at me. Me. The dirt girl, the mud bride, the one who 3 years ago they pitied for choosing a man who spent more time with soil than spreadsheets. I blinked. Help? With what? Miles folded his napkin with surgical precision. "We've got some cash flow issues. Temporary, but our accountant flagged something interesting." He opened a manila folder and slid a paper across the table. Your property, the farm. It's one of the few family assets not tied up in liabilities. Your name's on the deed, right? My blood ran cold. Wait, what are you asking? Caleb said, voice low. Sienna clasped her hands together like she was presenting a TED Talk. Just for consideration. Maybe we consolidate the land, use it as collateral. You wouldn't lose anything. We'd handle the paperwork. It's more of a gesture, really. A gesture, I repeated, staring at her. Caleb's hand slipped into mine under the table. I could feel the pulse in his palm, steady but firm. You want us to risk our home so you can bail out your empire? I wouldn't put it like that, Miles said, chuckling nervously. Then how would you put it? Caleb's voice was sharper now. Come on, my father said, rubbing his temples. This isn't personal. It's about preserving the family legacy. I looked around the room. Legacy? For years, I had been invisible in this family, the afterthought, the one who was too idealistic, too modest, too small. And now, suddenly, my life, my land, my work, they mattered. Not because they respected them, but because they needed them. And for the first time in a long, long while, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be needed. The thing about being needed is that it often comes wrapped in urgency and guilt. By the time Caleb and I got home that evening, I could already feel the weight of my family's crisis creeping into our kitchen like a winter draft. I didn't speak during the ride, neither did he, but our silence wasn't the angry kind. It was the kind that buzzed with 1,000 unspoken what the hells. I set the casserole dish in the sink. I never even got to serve it. What do you think they're not saying? I asked finally. Caleb didn't look up from unlacing his boots. They're saying plenty, just not out loud. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the wooden beams above our bed, counting knots in the grain. I kept replaying Sienna's voice. Just a gesture, like it was nothing. Like our land, our work, our life was some dusty token in a Monopoly game they were suddenly losing. The next morning, I walked the rows of our field before sunrise. It always grounded me. The squash vines were curling beautifully, and the tomato plants were thick with fruit. The soil was still damp from the night's rain, rich and alive beneath my boots. This land wasn't perfect. It had weeds and wild rabbits and the occasional stubborn patch that refused to grow. But it was ours. Caleb and I built it together year after year, seed after seed. Just before breakfast, my phone buzzed with a text. Celeste. Can we talk? Not in person, just not ready to go back to that house. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring. Elena, she said, voice low. I didn't know they were going to do that. The whole use your land thing, I swear. I believe you, I said, and I did. I think it's worse than they're letting on. How worse? She hesitated, then exhaled. Sienna and Miles leveraged everything. The second house, the trust fund, even the TV rights to her show's reruns. There's an SEC inquiry into Miles' investment firm. If it goes public, they could lose it all. And they want to drag us into it. Not just you. Mom and Dad signed off on some of Miles' ventures. If they go under, it's not just egg on their face. It's retirement gone. I leaned against the kitchen counter, trying to steady my breath. They think they're protecting what's left, Celeste added. And to them, you're the last thing left. They don't even know me, I snapped. They know their version of me. The girl who gives up a teaching job to sell lettuce, the one who settled for a man who works with his hands. Elena. They don't see Caleb. They see a stereotype. They see dirt under his nails and miss the man who rebuilt this land from nothing. There was a pause. Then she said quietly, You don't have to convince me. I see him. I see you. I always did. It was the first time in a long time I believed someone in my family meant that. By the end of the week, I received a formal envelope in the mail, hand-delivered by a courier. It was cream-colored, thick, sealed with an embossed Rhodes family crest. They'd never sent me anything with that much ceremony, not even when I graduated summa cum laude. Inside was an invitation. Family meeting. Sunday at 2 p.m. Location, our home. Attendance expected. No exceptions. No explanations, no apologies. Just expectation. I showed it to Caleb. He read it twice, then set it on the table and folded his arms. "They're circling the wagons," he said, "and they want us inside." "But we're not wagons," I said. "We're the damn barn they're trying to sell." He didn't laugh. Neither did I. For the next 2 days, I felt like I was watching my own life from the outside. The trees bloomed like they always did. The hens clucked and laid eggs like clockwork. But under it all was a tremor, the sense that something was about to crack wide open. Caleb started pulling documents from the safe. I hadn't seen that folder since we signed the land title. It held our deed, purchase receipts, contracts, and something I'd forgotten about entirely, a letter from my father. He'd written it the year we bought the farm, a letter that looked like support, but read like subtle control. "I hope this land gives you the peace you couldn't find in our world. But remember, family is foundation. We are the structure. Don't build too far from the house." I handed the letter back to Caleb without a word. On Sunday, just before 2 p.m., I pulled my hair into a simple braid and wore my oldest denim shirt, the one with a patch on the elbow from where I tore it fencing in the orchard. Caleb wore the same boots he'd worn since our wedding day. The driveway started rumbling with tires at 1:58. 3 luxury SUVs, 1 European sedan, and a rental car that looked out of place even among the opulence, probably Celeste's. She always refused to use the family car allowance. I watched them through the curtain. My parents stepped out first. My mother in a blazer too heavy for spring, my father carrying a binder like he was chairing a board meeting. Sienna exited last, in white, always white, holding a leather clutch under one arm and walking like the world owed her solid ground. I didn't flinch. Instead, I turned to Caleb, who was standing by the doorway, calm as ever. "You ready?" I asked. His eyes met mine. "Are you?" I nodded. I wasn't just ready. I was done being small. They filed into our home like they were walking into a courtroom, shoulders tight, faces blank, no one making eye contact for longer than necessary. The house was warm, the scent of rosemary and soil clinging to the air. I had just baked a batch of buttermilk biscuits that sat untouched on the counter. I didn't offer any. Sienna chose the biggest chair, of course, the one near the fireplace that Caleb built from salvaged stone. She crossed her legs and rested her designer clutch on her knee like she was still on camera. My father cleared his throat. My mother clasped her hands tightly in her lap. Celeste hovered near the window, pretending to admire the potted herbs. Miles didn't sit. He stood with his back to the mantel, like a man about to pitch a startup to hostile investors. Caleb and I sat on the love seat, the worn plaid fabric between us and them like a fault line. "Well," my father began, "thank you for hosting us." "You invited yourselves," I said, "but sure, you're welcome." He gave me a tight smile and opened the binder. "We're here to discuss the farm." "You mean our home," Caleb corrected. "Semantics," Miles muttered. "No," Caleb said, sharper now. "Intent." Sienna exhaled dramatically. "Can we not make this emotional?" "I'm sorry," I said, leaning forward. "Are we inconveniencing your disaster management?" Vivian, my mother, spoke up, voice trembling. "We didn't come to fight. We came to ask for help, as a family." "Where was family," I asked, "when you left me off the Christmas guest list 2 years in a row?" "Now's not the time for ancient history," Harlan snapped. "No, now is the time you want a favor," I replied. My father shifted in his seat. "We've assessed the situation carefully. Miles's firm is facing temporary challenges." "SEC investigations aren't temporary," Celeste interrupted softly from her corner. Sienna turned to glare at her. "You're not helping." "I'm not here to help you," Celeste shot back. "I'm here because Elena deserves witnesses." That's when Caleb reached under the coffee table and pulled out a manila folder. "I thought we might get to this point," he said, "so we've prepared some materials." Miles laughed, short and sharp. "Prepared? Are you threatening us with farm invoices?" "No," Caleb replied. "I'm reminding you this isn't just dirt. This land is protected under multiple agricultural preservation laws. You can't use it as collateral without consent from the title holders. And guess what? That's Elena and me." He laid the deed on the table. My mother paled. My father leaned in, scanning the papers like he'd find a loophole between the margins. "But this land was purchased with family assistance," Vivian argued. "We repaid that within 18 months, I said calmly, "with interest. We have the bank statements too." Caleb added, "Also, any attempt to force a sale will trigger a federal grand violation. We're under contract for 2 soil regeneration pilot programs." "What does that even mean?" Sienna said, her voice cracking. "It means," I said, "that the government recognizes the value of our dirt more than our own blood does." "You're being dramatic," Miles snapped. "This is just a business proposition." "You never saw this place as a business until you needed it," I said. "You mocked it, mocked me." "I didn't mean," my mother started. "No," I said, louder now. "You did. You all did. Every birthday, every wedding, every family dinner where you treated Caleb like a handyman and me like a dropout with a hoe." "We thought you wanted that life," my father said, weakly. "No," I replied. "You thought I deserved it, because I didn't chase money or titles or press mentions, because I didn't fit into your curated Rhodes family newsletter." A heavy silence settled over the room. Sienna stood. "So that's it? You're turning your back on us?" "I'm turning toward myself," I said, "and finally, I'm choosing to stay where I'm seen, not where I'm needed for convenience." Vivian's eyes welled. "What about family? What about us? You built walls with your pride, and now you want to cross my porch like nothing happened." "We made mistakes," Harlan said, "but families forgive." "No," Caleb said, voice low. "Families repair. Forgiveness comes after that, not before." Sienna picked up her bag, mascara streaked slightly down one cheek. Miles looked like he might throw up. They didn't apologize, not really. They just left. No door slam, no dramatic exit. Just the sound of tires crunching gravel one more time. Celeste lingered. She picked up a biscuit from the counter and took a bite. "They'll never get it," she said, chewing slowly. "They don't have to," I replied. And in that moment, I realized I didn't want them to. Not anymore. It didn't take long for the storm to return. 2 days after they left our house, a man in a suit knocked on our door. His shoes didn't belong on our porch. His clipboard was too clean. "Are you Elena Rhodes?" he asked. "Yes." "I'm here on behalf of Carter Holdings. You may want to speak with your legal counsel before reviewing these." He handed me a packet, 15 pages thick, a demand to vacate, a proposed acquisition, some veiled legal language dressed up like opportunity. I didn't even flinch. "Thanks," I said, closing the door in his face. When I laid the documents on our kitchen table, Caleb didn't say anything. He just pulled out the drawer where we kept our records, opened the fireproof box, and retrieved a business card. Leonard Wise. Agricultural counsel, semi-retired, but sharp as a scythe in a drought. He answered on the first ring. "I've been waiting on your call," he said. "They've been busy. Time to get busier." The meeting didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened right here. Again. Our house, our rules. But this time, they brought backup. Sienna in all white again. Miles in another suit, though his collar was wrinkled this time. My parents, with that practiced expression that fell somewhere between forced apology and conditional forgiveness. And behind them, a new face, an attorney with sleek glasses and a voice that sounded like copy from a luxury car commercial. Leonard greeted them with a nod and no smile. "Shall we get started?" he asked. They didn't waste time. Miles's attorney laid out a revised offer, a joint ownership structure, capital infusion, shared profit distribution, even a PR plan to spin the deal as a family collaboration. "You think we need a rebrand?" I asked. "I think you need to be realistic," Miles said. "There's more at stake here than stubborn pride." "And what's at stake for you?" Caleb asked. "Your last yacht payment?" "I made mistakes," Miles snapped. "So did you, marrying into failure." Leonard's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Carter, I'd suggest you retract that statement, or I can proceed directly to filing a restraining injunction on behalf of my clients." Miles swallowed hard. Sienna jumped in. "Look, Elena, we didn't come here to fight. We came here because we're drowning, and we hoped you might throw us a line." "And if I don't?" I asked. "Then we lose everything," she whispered, "Tiffany included." The mention of her daughter twisted something sharp in my chest. I pictured the little girl running barefoot through that marble foyer, asking about chicken eggs and basil during her one and only visit to our farm. "You dragged your child into this," I said. "I didn't." Vivian stood, tears in her eyes. "We were wrong about everything, about Caleb, about you. But please don't let pride keep you from saving your family." I took a long breath. Caleb's hand found mine again, and this time I didn't need it to steady me. "You talk about pride like it's the villain," I said, "but for the first time in my life, I'm proud. Not in comparison to anyone else, just proud to be where I am, with what I've built, with who I love." Harlan stood. "So that's it? You're cutting us off?" "I'm drawing a line," I replied. "You don't get to spend a lifetime mocking someone's life and then demand to profit from it." Leonard stood beside me. "And for the record, this farm, every inch of it, is registered to Stonewood Acres LLC, a limited liability company founded and managed exclusively by Elena Rhodes and Caleb Foster. There are no co-signers, no lien holders, no legal standing for forced collaboration." The attorney in the sleek glasses didn't even try to argue. Leonard continued, "Any attempt to apply public pressure or defame my clients will be met with swift and public legal action. I have the statements drafted already." The room went quiet. Sienna sat back down. Her eyes were glassy, but not from remorse, just exhaustion. "I never hated you," she said softly. "I just hated that you were happy without everything I thought I needed." I didn't reply. Because she wasn't wrong. And that realization, somehow, hurt her more than any insult I could throw back. They left slower this time. No shouting, no final threats, just resignation. Miles lingered on the porch, looking like a man who had never been told no without a handshake and a loophole. "Don't come back," Caleb said, his voice low. "Wasn't planning to," muttered, and walked away. As they drove off, Leonard packed up his briefcase. "Well," he said, "you were right." "About what?" I asked. "Family doesn't fall apart. It just finally shows you who it always was." He tipped his hat and left us standing there, in the doorway they tried to take. Caleb turned to me. "You okay?" I nodded. "Sure?" "No," I said, "but I'm free."
A week passed. Then 2. No more surprise visits, no more legal envelopes. Just silence, the kind that felt less like an absence and more like a clearing. For the first time in years, I breathed without checking over my shoulder. The air on our land smelled different now, not because the earth had changed, but because I had. Caleb and I returned to the rhythm that had always sustained us. Morning coffee on the porch, checking the irrigation lines, hauling crates of spring greens to the co-op in town. But even as things went back to normal, something inside me had shifted permanently. I no longer saw myself as the other Rhodes sister. I no longer carried that invisible measuring stick everywhere I went. And then, one day, my phone buzzed. "Celeste. Just me. No drama, no lawyers. Can I stop by?" I said yes. She showed up with a pie. "I know you hate apple," she said sheepishly, "but it's the only thing I know how to bake." I let out a soft laugh and hugged her. She was the only one who ever really tried. We ate the pie anyway, on the porch, quiet, easy. "They're telling everyone you set them up," she said after a while. "I didn't." "I know." Celeste picked at the crust with her fork. "You could have humiliated them, publicly. You didn't." "I didn't need to," I said. "They did that all by themselves." She nodded. "Tiffany's been asking about you." That name still pulled at something in me. "She deserves better than all this." "She does," Celeste agreed. "That's why I told Sienna that if she wants her daughter to know what strength looks like, she should start by pointing to you." I blinked hard. Didn't cry. Not this time. Before she left, Celeste reached into her bag and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photo. Me and Caleb, standing in front of our farmhouse, the fields golden behind us. I hadn't even realized someone had taken it. I was laughing. His hand was on my back. "You should frame it," she said. "This is the Rhodes legacy worth keeping." That night, Caleb and I walked the rows again, just like we used to do when everything was new and uncertain and bursting with potential. The moon lit the field in silver and shadow. Crickets hummed in every direction. "You did it," he said, quietly. "No," I corrected. "We did." He smiled at me, that soft, sure smile I fell in love with before I even knew what falling in love really meant. I never needed them to approve of us, I told him, but I think, deep down, I needed to not care. And now? I looked out at the land, ours, every root, every ridge. I thought about the years spent apologizing for not being more like them, the family reunions filled with fake smiles, the weddings and birthdays where my name was barely mentioned. And then I thought about this place, this life, the love we built without an audience. Now, I said, I finally believe I was never the disappointment. He squeezed my hand. "You were the seed," he said. "They just didn't stick around long enough to see what grew." And maybe that's what family really is. Not the people who share your blood, but the ones who stand beside you when it's your name on the deed, your hands in the soil, and your future on the line. Maybe family is who stays when you finally stop asking them to.
So, what did you feel while walking through this journey with me? Was there a moment that made you pause? A line that made you think of someone? A choice you would have made differently? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment. Not just a reaction, but your truth. Let's keep this space honest, raw, and human. And if this story meant something to you, even just a little, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe for more. There are more voices waiting to be heard, more truths waiting to be told. Thanks for staying with me until the end.